Evening sun sank low in the sky, casting long shadows over George Strait's Texas ranch. The air hung heavy with the scent of earth and sweet grass, mingling with the faint promise of rain. A chair creaked as he shifted, and the quietness of the world around him felt almost deafening. The porch where he sat had held countless memories, but on this night it felt particularly lonely. With a sigh, George leaned down to his weathered guitar case, an old companion that had traveled many miles with him through fame and solitude. Its surface, worn and scratched from years of use, held stories beneath its cracked exterior. As he unlatched it, a wave of nostalgia washed over him, the sound of laughter, a strummed chord, and the late-night melodies he had shared with his best friend Norma. Amid the dusty strings and picks lay something unexpected, a crumpled note, yellowed with age. A jolt of recognition pulsed through him as he reached for it, his heart racing. The familiar looping script across the page was unmistakable, and it pierced straight into the heart of his sorrow. "Promise me, George," the note read, "that we'll never let go of our dreams. We'll always chase them together." The words reverberated in his mind, echoing with anguish and warmth. All at once, George was transported back to those long, starry nights spent on this very porch, where they had poured their souls into songs, their hopes intertwined like the bright constellations above them. For each laugh shared, there had been a dream forged, their futures sketched in musical notes and heartfelt whispers. But now her laughter was nothing but a haunting melody in the silence that surrounded him. The vibrant scenes of their past had withered, leaving him alone in the shadows of grief. Fame had wrapped him in its embrace, yet he felt more isolated than ever. Crowds cheered for the man who sang, but beneath the stage lights, George wrestled with the consciousness of a heavy heart. When the applause faded, a hollow sound lingered in its place. He closed his eyes, summoning memories that both comforted and haunted him. That last time they played together felt like a lifetime ago. The twinkling stars bore witness to their promises, their belief in each other. But after her sudden departure, life had spiraled into a blend of darkness and ache. He opened his eyes, staring out into the vast expanse of his land. The fields swayed gently in the evening breeze, but the lonesomeness lingered like a thick fog wrapping around his shoulders. Had he betrayed their dreams by moving on? Had he buried her spirit so deep that it could never emerge again? For too long, George had tucked away his memories, letting the world move past him. Fear gripped him, a fear of forgetting her, of losing what they had built together. But as he clutched the note in his trembling hand, he felt a spark ignite within the ashes of despair. What if honoring her memory meant embracing the dreams again? A deep breath steadied him. It was time to confront the silence that had settled over his heart. The shadows were deepening around him, and the haunting memories filled every crevice of his being. But in that moment he made a choice. He would revisit their shared dreams and the songs that had once brought them to life. The night stretched ahead, offering shadows and stars alike. With renewed purpose, George placed the note back atop his guitar, a promise to himself and to Norma that he would not let their dreams fade into the past. Instead, he would awaken them, weaving her spirit into every chord he played and every word he sang. And so the quiet night bore witness to a promise rekindled, the beginning of a journey he had feared to embark upon. The stars winked down, hinting at an adventure of memories waiting to unfurl. As the night deepened, the lanterns on the porch flickered softly, illuminating George as he leaned back in his chair, the guitar cradled gently across his lap. He closed his eyes, allowing the surrounding darkness to plunge him into a reverie of the past. Images danced before him, vivid and alive, Norma's laughter ringing like the chime of bells, the shared dreams that had brought them to life in those moments when hope seemed boundless. George could almost hear the strum of the guitar, their melody weaving through the quiet of their small Texas town, a symphony of dreams crafted around campfires and crowded living rooms. They had been young, ambitious, and inseparable. In those sunlit days, they thought they could conquer the world with their music, chasing the whispers of promise that lingered in the air. Flashbacks unfolded like a scrapbook, each memory a snapshot frozen in time. It was a summer night, the air thick with the scent of blooming wildflowers. George and Norma sat on the hood of an old truck, guitars in hand, the stars shimmering overhead like tiny diamonds. They had been laughing, the carefree sound mingling with the gentle strumming of their instruments. "Did you ever think we'd make it this far, George?" Norma had asked, her eyes sparkling with mischief. He remembered smiling at her, the warmth of friendship enveloping them. "You know I've always believed in us. You make the magic happen, Norma." "Magic, huh? Just you wait. One day we're going to be up on that stage, and everyone's going to hear our story," she said, her voice filled with conviction. It was a promise tied with dreams, a thread they both clung to tightly. The visions shifted again, and he could almost hear their voices echoing through the halls of those small-town bars where they first sang. Crowds would gather, heads bobbing to the beat of their songs, eyes locked on the stage with a sense of wonder. The thrill of each performance had been like drug, the rush of connection undeniable. Behind the microphone, George had felt invincible alongside Norma, their passion fueling the music that poured from their souls. But shadows lingered over the bright memories, creeping in with every passing year. Success had come, but so had the strains of fame. Touring took its toll, the distances between performances pulling them apart, while the music industry shifted around them like a storm. George's heart clenched as he remembered the last concert they had shared. The lights were bright that night, the cheers deafening. But as he glanced to his right, he'd found only emptiness where Norma should have been. The weight of reality pressed on him like a heavy fog, drowning the echoes of joy. Uninvited, the memory of her final days seeped into his thoughts, how the laughter had evaporated, replaced by whispered fears and illness. George had tried to be strong during those days, wanting to shield her from anything that could darken their world. But in the end, it was his laughter that faded into silence. Back on the porch, the gentle wind brought him back, yet the ache of that void still stung. He pushed a hand through his hair, overwhelmed by the openness of grief that lay tangled within the strands of celebrated career highlights. They were vivid on the surface, yet underneath was a life fractured, marked by absence. He couldn't hold on to that pain forever. It would rob him of the joy they had created. In the depths of sorrow lay the understanding that Norma had never wanted him to be alone. She had instilled in him the belief that dreams mattered, that they deserved to be shared, even after she was gone. And that's when a thought began to blossom within him. Perhaps it wasn't too late. As he gripped the guitar, he could feel Norma's spirit weaving through the chords, carrying the essence of their shared laughter. He opened his eyes and looked out at the fields again, feeling a pull to unearth the songs they had written together, breathing new life into the moments they had captured. The porch felt different, more alive, as if it were urging him to reclaim what he had buried. George set the guitar across his knee, determining to summon the melodies that had once inspired them both. He needed to gather the threads of the past and weave them into a new tapestry, one that honored not only his dreams, but also Norma's legacy. With one hand, he strummed the strings, the gentle twang resonating into the night. The first notes were shaky, hesitant, but they filled the air with a familiar warmth, resurrecting fragments of their old songs. He closed his eyes, letting the memories guide him, each note tearing down the walls he had built in his heart. And there it was, the song that had been hidden away, a long-forgotten promise trapped beneath layers of sorrow. As the melody swelled and unfolded, George felt the warmth of Norma's laughter surrounding him, as though she herself was strumming alongside him, urging him on. The darkness retreated, giving way to a renewed sense of purpose. Each chord he played brought him closer to healing. The dreams they had forged together began to blossom anew, and for the first time in years, George felt a glimmer of hope, a light breaking through the heavy clouds of grief. Tonight, he would honor her memory in a way he hadn't dared to before. He would breathe life into their legacy and dare to share it with the world once more. This was just the beginning, a promise to carry forward, not only for himself, but for Norma too. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue across the Texas plains, George continued to strum the familiar chords that echoed memories of the past. Yet with every note he played, the bittersweet weight of loneliness wrapped around him like a heavy blanket, threatening to smother the light he had just begun to rediscover. Days turned into weeks, and George found himself retreating back into solitude. The inspiration that had ignited within him flickered like a candle in the wind. Each sunset reminded him of joyful times filled with laughter and shared dreams, not just with Norma, but with the friends and family who had been a constant part of his journey. Their faces became increasingly distant memories, and it pained him to feel them fade. In the bright lights of his concerts, George's persona transformed, yet in the shadows, he remained the same, wrestling with guilt and grief. Applause reverberated, but a hollow echo lingered beneath the cheers. The songs he performed felt like ghosts, lost in the vastness of fame without the heart that once filled them with life. After each show, George retreated backstage. Alone amidst the accolades, the isolation felt suffocating. He longed for the days when laughter could fill the air, when success didn't mean sacrificing the bond that fueled their dreams. With a heavy sigh, George picked up the phone and dialed Felipe's number. His old friend answered on the second ring, his voice gruff but warm, a comfort amidst the chaos. "George, it's been a while," Felipe said, a hint of concern lacing his tone. "Yeah, I've just been busy," George replied, forcing the words through a tight throat. "Busy or hiding?" Felipe's voice softened, understanding. "You need to get out. Come have coffee with me." With a mix of reluctance and gratitude, George agreed. When he arrived at Felipe's modest home, the comforting familiarity enveloped him. They settled at the kitchen table, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. Felipe looked at him with genuine concern. "You're not yourself, George. Not since, you know." George stirred his coffee absently. "It's hard, man. I thought I could just push through it." Felipe leaned in, his voice steady. "Grief hits us differently, but shoving it aside won't make it go away. Honor her memory, don't hide from it." A heavy silence filled the space between them, and George felt the weight of those words sink in. "I guess I thought by keeping everything inside, I was protecting our dreams. But now," his voice trailed off. "Letting people in is real strength," Felipe urged. "She wouldn't want you to suffer alone." After hours of talking and reminiscing, George left Felipe's house feeling a little lighter. The late Texas sky was a deep indigo, scattered with stars, mirroring his own heart, a canvas filled with vague memories waiting to burst forth. The following morning, he woke with a sense of urgency, a longing to let the world hear Norma's songs once more. He returned to the porch, the bright morning light embracing him, and reached for his guitar. As he began to strum, the first notes felt hesitant, but they spilled forth, each strum invigorating him, unlocking hidden emotions. Memories intertwined with the music, washing over him like a long-awaited rain. George could feel Norma's spirit with him, guiding him through the familiar melodies, filling the void with warmth. The more he played, the more he found his footing. Those melodies transformed from cries of loneliness into a celebration of life, a tribute to Norma. With each chorus sang, he finally felt the heaviness of grief recede a little more, replaced by the weight of resilience and purpose. He realized he could channel his pain into something meaningful. It was a leap of faith, one that could either ignite his spirit or leave him vulnerable again. When he'd finished his first song, George looked out at the fields, feeling the warmth of the sun kissing his face. The shadows of grief still lurked, but they no longer consumed him. Instead, he felt the stirring of hope, a promise rekindled, not only in him, but also for Norma. George had found a way to honor her through music and memories, awakening the shared dreams that had once burned brightly. The journey ahead felt daunting, but filled with possibilities, and he was ready to embrace them, one note at a time. The days turned into a blur, but within George's heart a renewed passion began to blossom. Each morning, he would rise with the sun, the light streaming through his windows like an invitation to embrace life. His guitar became a constant companion, its strings vibrating with the echoes of memories, transforming them into songs of hope and love. George began writing feverishly, letting the emotions flow freely, honoring Norma's spirit in every note. One warm afternoon, as he sat on the porch with a notebook perched on his knee, he strummed a new melody that encapsulated all the joy and sorrow he had experienced. Every chord brought a sense of catharsis, and with each verse the weight of grief seemed to lift. He noticed the flowers blooming in the garden, the vibrant colors a stark contrast to the darkness that had clouded his soul for so long. He decided it was time to share these songs, to let the world hear the echoes of his heart. With this newfound determination, he reached out to some of his old friends in the music industry, inviting them to a gathering at his home, a small get-together to showcase his new creations. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Felipe asked during a phone call, concern lacing his voice. "It might bring back a lot of memories." "I know," George replied, his voice firm yet tinged with vulnerability. "But it's time. I can't keep hiding forever." I need to celebrate her life, and this music is part of that. The day arrived, and the familiar scent of Texas wildflowers filled the air as friends trickled in. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation, laughter mingling with the sounds of guitars being tuned and voices raised in song. George's heart raced as he looked around, seeing familiar faces from days long past. There was a comforting warmth in the room, an unspoken understanding that everyone had come to share not just in his music, but in the memory of Norma. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, George stood before his friends, gripping his guitar. The sight of their encouraging smiles steadied his nerves. He took a deep breath, letting the fear of vulnerability wash over him, and settled into the rhythm of the moment. "Thanks for being here," George began, the weight of emotion swirling in his chest. "This isn't just a showcase. It's a tribute to someone who meant the world to me. We used to dream of sharing our music together, and I want to honor that dream tonight." With that, he launched into the first song, the melody flowing effortlessly, filled with the echoes of shared laughter and whispered promises. Each note hung in the air like a prayer, a sacred journey of love and loss. The room was still, the only sound coming from the guitar and George's voice rich with emotion, telling the story of his heart. As the final chords faded, a hushed silence followed. Then, one by one, his friends erupted in heartfelt applause. George felt a rush of exhilaration mixed with relief, emotions he hadn't experienced in a long time. They understood, they listened, and they cared. He continued playing through the night, each song a piece of his soul laid bare. The stories behind the lyrics flowed freely, moments spent with Norma, the struggles they fought together, and the dreams they had woven into the fabric of their lives. It was raw, it was real, and amidst the vulnerability, he discovered strength, the kind that comes from letting others in, from sharing the burden of loss. As the night wore on, George noticed tears glistening in the eyes of some friends, and others nodded along, a collective appreciation for the beauty in grief. The room filled with laughter and stories as the music intermingled with heartfelt conversations, old memories resurfacing, tales shared, and bonds rekindled. "George, I never knew you had this depth of feeling in your music," one friend remarked. "You've captured what it means to really live, to love, and to let go. This is powerful." The words buoyed George's spirit, the affirmation igniting a flicker of vitality within him. It was at that moment he realized that he had not only begun to heal, but also reignited the flame of connection, both with his past and the friends who surrounded him. "The music is just the beginning," Felipe said, clapping George on the shoulder. "You've got to keep sharing this with the world." The realization washed over him. These songs were meant to reach others, to inspire and uplift. He started to envision a future where he could perform again, not just as a musician but as a storyteller, a vessel sharing the lessons born of love and loss. In the weeks that followed, George made a commitment. He would take these songs to the stage, not only to honor Norma, but to embark on a new chapter in his life. He began scheduling performances at local venues, reconnecting with the music scene he had distanced himself from for far too long. The first night on stage felt electric. As he stood under the bright lights, the familiar thrill rushed through him, but this time it was accompanied by a purpose, connecting to others, sharing the journey of healing and hope. He felt Norma's presence, urging him forward, and as he began to play, he poured every ounce of emotion into the guitar. The audience responded with an outpouring of emotion. People swayed and sang along, sharing in the experience of life, an affirmation that grief and joy were intertwined. And as George played, he realized that through this rebirth he wasn't just healing himself, but creating a space where others could find solace in shared stories. The music transcended the sorrow. It became a bridge, linking hearts and lives, resonating deeper than the pain he had once felt. In that moment, George Strait knew he was not alone. Every strum, every lyric became a celebration of living, a tribute not only to Norma, but to the resilience of dreams fulfilled and nurtured beyond loss. And he approached each performance anew, filled with determination and love, ready to embrace whatever the journey brought him next. The energy surrounding George's performances became palpable. Every show was more than just an act. It blossomed into a gathering, a community of souls united by the music. He filled local venues, welcoming familiar faces and newcomers alike. People shared their own stories of loss, love, and redemption, the bond they formed with George profound and real. One evening, as the sun dipped into the horizon, the atmosphere brimmed with excitement as George took the stage at a popular local bar. String lights twinkled above, casting a warm glow as he surveyed the crowd. The chatter quieted, and he could hear the gentle clinking of glasses, the soft rustling of anxious patrons waiting for the first note. He felt that familiar rush, not just for the thrill of performing, but for the genuine connection waiting in the wings. "I'm glad you all came out tonight," George began, his voice steady yet warm. "I've been doing a lot of soul-searching lately, and I want to share something that goes beyond just music. These songs are pieces of my heart, and memories of someone special to me, my late wife, Norma." A hush fell over the bar. He could see people leaning in, their attention captured as he began to strum the familiar chords of a song he wrote shortly after Norma's passing. The notes floated out, filling the room with bittersweet nostalgia, drawing everyone into a collective experience. As George sang, the lyrics poured forth like a wellspring of emotion, capturing the ache of loss, the sweetness of memories, and the hope that emerged from sorrow. Flashes of Norma's smile shimmered behind his closed eyelids, guiding his soul forward. As he reached the bridge of the song, he glanced around. A woman in the front row wiped away tears, and across the room, a father held his daughter close, swaying to the melody. George felt the ripple of connection deepen, each person present a thread woven together in this tapestry of shared humanity. After the last note faded, the applause erupted like a wave crashing onto the shore. George basked in the warmth, letting the applause wrap around him like a comforting blanket. In that moment, he understood that this was not just performance, it was healing, for him and for everyone present. As he transitioned between songs, he told stories that bridged the gap between his heart and the audience. He spoke of moments spent with Norma, her laughter echoing through the halls of their home, their shared dreams sewn into the very fabric of their lives. Each recollection became an invitation for others to share their own journeys, creating a mosaic of life woven through music. "Thank you all for sharing this with me," he said towards the end of the night, his heart full, eyes scanning the room. "You've made it clear that love never truly leaves us. It carries on in the songs we sing and the memories we cherish." After the show, a line gathered to talk with George, their stories pouring forth like a gentle stream. One woman stepped forward, teary-eyed but smiling. "Your words brought back so many memories of my husband. Thank you for sharing your heart." George smiled back, feeling the truth of their shared experience, a reminder that grief has the power to connect if we let it. Others stepped forward, each with their own stories of loss and love, expressing gratitude for his music. With each conversation, George was reminded of the profound impact of vulnerability and compassion. His reputation as a storyteller began to spread. People started traveling from neighboring towns to listen and share their own journeys at his shows. Word of George's heartfelt performances reached local newspapers, and soon the gatherings grew larger. Despite the surge in attention, George remained grounded. He continued to write and create, each song a stepping stone on his journey to healing. He knew that every performance was essential, not just for him, but for everyone who found solace in his music. Months rolled on, and with them came the rhythm of new experiences. One day, after a performance wrapped in joy, George received an unexpected call from a prominent record label. They had heard about his journey and wanted to offer him a chance to record an album dedicated to the songs inspired by Norma, songs that encapsulated the essence of grief, love, and hope. Surprise intertwined with excitement as he listened to the voice on the other end. It felt surreal, a validation of the path he had walked. "We believe these songs could touch hearts across the country," the voice said gently. "Would you consider joining us?" The offer opened a floodgate of emotions. Fear mingled with elation. This was more than just an opportunity to share his music. It was a chance to fulfill the dreams he and Norma had nourished together. It also begged the question, could he truly bring these pieces of his heart to a national audience? After some reflection, George embraced the challenge. He took time away from his shows to enter the studio, pouring every ounce of emotion into the recordings. Each session became a journey, a space where he could explore the depths of his grief while celebrating the memories of Norma, chronicling their love story as a beacon for others facing similar struggles. In the studio, George found a team that resonated deeply with his mission. Fellow musicians offered their talents, lending voices and instruments to enrich his vision. Under their collaborative spirit, songs transformed into beautiful tapestries, crafted from shared experiences and diverse backgrounds. In the months that followed, the album took shape, a collection of heartfelt melodies layered with stories rich in emotion. George invited friends, family, and even some fans to listen to the near-completed tracks during a small gathering, seeking their thoughts and reactions. As he played the final versions, he watched their faces, capturing the glow of recognition, shared laughter, and the soft falling of tears. The music touched them, igniting an understanding that transcended words. Finally, the day of the album release dawned bright and clear. In front of the camera, George spoke nervously to the audience, waiting to hear the music that had so profoundly shaped his journey. "These songs are not just for me, they are for those who have loved and lost. I want each of you to feel seen, because we all share this journey together." As the first song played, an ode to joy and loss, he felt the weight of their collective journeys rise into the air, intertwining, healing. The music washed over him, its power undeniable, and he knew that with each note he was not alone in his journey forward. From that moment onward, George Strait embraced the journey ahead, not simply as an artist reborn, but as a community leader, one who used his music to inspire healing and foster connection. His heart opened to the promise that every song played, every story shared was a step toward creating a world where love thrived and memories lived on. The release of George's album marked a turning point, not just in his career, but in the lives of those who resonated with each note. As the songs made their way into the world, George received an influx of messages from fans, sharing their own stories of loss and healing. The music had transcended its source, becoming a lifeline for those searching for solace amidst their pain. One evening, after a particularly long day of promoting the album, George found himself sitting on the porch of his home, strumming the chords to a new song that stemmed from a message he had received. A young man had written to him, sharing how he had lost his father just weeks before the album release. The man had poured out his heart in the message, how the new songs had provided him comfort during sleepless nights, offering him hope from the depths of his grief. With the twilight sky blending shades of purple and blue, George felt an overwhelming mix of gratitude and responsibility. The weight of his past struggles had transformed into a beacon of hope for others. He understood in that moment that music could connect people in ways words often could not. Determined to harness the power of his music further, he began planning a community tour. It would be different from his previous performances, focused on intimate gatherings where he could engage directly with his audience. The idea was to create a safe space for sharing, not just his music, but for everyone to open up about their own journeys of love and loss. As he reached out to local venues across Texas, the response was enthusiastic. People were eager to be part of something that celebrated life through music and storytelling. In the months leading up to the tour, George collaborated with various community organizations and grief support groups, broadening the reach of his message. On the first night of the tour, George stood backstage, his heart racing with anticipation. This wasn't just about him performing, it was a collective experience he was sharing with those who had turned up to listen. The venue was modest, filled with friendly faces who had come to support one another, each individual carrying their own stories. As he stepped into the spotlight, he scanned the crowd, feeling the energy hum through the air. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began. "This isn't a concert in the traditional sense. This is a celebration, a chance for us to share our stories through music, to find comfort in one another." He launched into his first song, pouring every emotion into the performance. The lyrics spoke of love lost but never forgotten, of the hope that springs from the most profound grief. The audience was captivated, swaying gently, some with tears streaming down their faces, others smiling in recognition of their shared experiences. Between songs, George opened the floor to stories, encouraging people to share their journeys. He listened intently as faces lit up with memories and laughter, intermixed with sorrow. One woman stood up, her voice trembling, as she recounted how she had lost her husband years ago. Hearing the themes of love resonate through George's music had reignited her own memories with comfort and respect. "This isn't just about mourning loss," she said, glancing around the room. "It's about celebrating life, about honoring those we've lost and accepting that they will always be with us in some way." Her sentiment sparked a wave of shared laughter and stories, other voices lending their experiences and heartwarming tales. This collective sharing created a compelling tapestry of life, weaving together diverse paths of grief, resilience, and love. George felt a sense of fulfillment that night, unlike any he had experienced before. It was clear that each performance was an invitation to heal together. He realized that the weight he had once carried alone was becoming lighter, dispersed in the air like music itself. After the final song, a young boy approached George. His eyes sparkled with admiration, a guitar slung awkwardly over his shoulder. "Can I play you something?" he asked, shy yet eager. George nodded, the warmth of the moment enveloping them both. The boy strummed his guitar, a simple melody emerging, and as he sang off-key, George couldn't help but smile. It was an earnest attempt to connect through the language they all shared. When the boy finished, applause broke out. George knelt down, their eyes meeting. "You have a gift, my friend," he said earnestly. "Keep sharing your music, and it will touch lives." The boy beamed, and George felt the spark of inspiration reflected in his eyes. This was the ripple effect of music, how it encouraged others to express their emotions and embrace life. As the tour continued, each performance echoed with the same energy, the intimate connection between George and the audience that flourished with every story shared. He could feel Norma's presence with him, guiding him, reminding him of the beauty in vulnerability. One evening, after a performance in a small town, George found himself enveloped by a group of women who had attended the show. They were part of a local grief support group, and they shared how his album had sparked conversations that were previously too painful to approach. "Your music brought us closer together," one woman said, her voice thick with emotion. "It opened up a space for us to share our own struggles." In that moment, George understood the legacy he was building, not just as an artist, but as a means for connection and healing. The music had transformed into a bridge, allowing people to traverse the often isolated landscapes of grief together. As the last night of the tour approached, George found himself reflecting on how far he had come. The journey had morphed into something richer than he could have ever imagined, an opportunity to be a part of something larger than himself, a chance to inspire others facing their own trials. He concluded the tour in a hometown venue packed to the brim. As he sang his final song, he felt the love and solidarity of everyone present intertwine in the air, a realization that they were all part of the same beautiful, messy, and hopeful journey of life. When the lights finally dimmed and the applause faded into the echoes of the night, George stood on stage, feeling the rush of emotions, the joy, the sorrow, the triumph of shared existence. He stepped back, taking a moment to embrace the crowd that had become a family. "Thank you for walking this journey with me," he said, his voice steady yet soft. "Together we have forged a new path for love, healing, and connection." In that moment, George Strait understood that this was not the end of his chapter, but rather the beginning of a lifelong pursuit, a commitment to keep bringing people together through music, one note at a time. As George stepped off the stage, exhilaration mingled with exhaustion. The applause still echoed, but more importantly, the connections he had fostered became increasingly clear. The tour had taught him that his music was not just a personal endeavor, it was a way to heal alongside others, forging bonds through shared experiences. Backstage, Felipe met him with a beaming smile. "You did it, George. These songs have brought people together in ways we never imagined," he said, clasping George's shoulder. The sincerity in Felipe's voice reinforced the depth of the impact they were making. "I couldn't have done it without you," George replied, reflecting on how far he had come with Felipe's support. "You encouraged me to share my heart, even when it was tough. Your vulnerability has inspired others," Felipe said softly. "You've created a legacy, my friend." In the weeks following the tour, George received countless messages from fans, each recounting their personal stories of loss and healing, motivated by his music. Moved by their heartfelt responses, he decided to extend his reach further, dreaming of bringing music to those who needed it most. Soon enough, opportunities arose to perform at hospitals and community centers. With his guitar slung over his back, he entered a local hospital where patients gathered, their faces reflecting their struggles. As he strummed his guitar and sang, he watched the shadows of weariness lift. Laughter intermingled with tears, as each note unfolded a sense of community. After the performance, a nurse approached him, eyes glistening with gratitude. "Your music has touched so many lives here." "Thank you," she said, a smile breaking through. George realized then that he was not just an artist. He had become a beacon of hope for others. Each performance became a reminder that love persists even in the face of heartbreak. He continued to share his experiences through music, allowing others to find comfort in the melodies. The nearly weekly performances breathed fresh life into his mission. One day, while playing at a community center, a young boy approached him, guitar in hand. "Can I play for you?" he asked, shyness evident in his demeanor. George nodded, and the boy began to strum his own tune, a melody full of raw emotion. George watched, feeling bursts of joy at the child's courage. "You have a real talent," he encouraged, kneeling to connect with the boy's spark. It was these moments that fueled George, reminding him of the power of music to change lives, regardless of age or circumstance. Months later, as he reflected on the impact of his journey, George began writing anew, songs about healing and resilience, channeling the collective spirit he had witnessed on the road. Each lyric paid homage to the stories shared with him, weaving a tapestry of hope and togetherness that resonated deeply. Finally, during a special concert for a local charity, George found himself surrounded by faces that had become familiar from previous performances. As he played, he felt the power of their shared experiences envelop him like a warm embrace. The atmosphere was filled with laughter, acknowledging that amidst sorrow, the light of hope continued to flicker. With every song, George honored not just his past, but forged a path forward. He understood that his legacy was one of connection, articulating shared pain while uplifting spirits, showing that the journey through grief could lead to profound understanding and togetherness. At the end of the concert, he looked out into the sea of faces shining with joy and solidarity. He saw in their eyes a collective recognition that they were all part of this journey together. "Thank you all for being here, tonight and always," George addressed the audience, voice choked with emotion but steady. "Your stories have inspired me, and together we have forged a community built on love and understanding." He stepped back, letting the moment sink in. This wasn't just a celebration of music. It was a reaffirmation of life, a commitment to keep sharing, connecting, and healing through the melody of human experience. As he departed the venue, a sense of peace enveloped him. George Strait had discovered the true power of music, not merely as an artist, but as a storyteller and friend, transforming pain into harmony, one note at a time.